Hi everyone, welcome to week number 8 of Your Move, Making the Most of Your Next Transition. I'm Linda Rossetti and I'm delighted that you're here. This week we have two important concepts that we're going to focus on, and that will conclude our cycle of how to make the most of your walk forward. Our topic really is refining those decisions about moving forward. And the two topics we're going to revisit this week are one, the process of moving forward, and the second is some vocabulary choices that are really, really important as we think about the choices that we have in front of us that will direct our path. Right? I want to make sure that we kind of start with a baseline and kind of say, what is it that we're trying to achieve in our transition, right? Over the last several weeks, we've revisited this notion of intention or our intended outcome that we're trying to produce in our transition. And oftentimes, in our mind's eye, we think that that's kind of one monolithic event, right? We're going to move, or we're going to find a new spouse, or we're going to reacquaint ourselves with family members who we've been disassociated with for a long time, all sorts of things, right? We all come to this with a different intention. But oftentimes we all have this notion of this moment when the light bulb is going to go off and we're going to have the idea or the solution. But I've found, in fact, that transition really doesn't lend itself to that. Really what happens in transition is there are a series of steps. And through those steps, we not only get closer to those things that really engage who we are, but we refine with each step what it is we're looking for in terms of that outcome. The one thing that's important along all of this is really debunking some vocabulary that our social norms have kind of rooted in all of us. And that is really the vocabulary, the binary vocabulary, right? I'm a techie, and this is where my techie comes out, is that we've told ourselves as a society that we succeed or we fail, or we've arrived or we haven't, right? That's binary vocabulary. It's either a 0 or a 1. There's no gray area. There's nothing in between. And to move forward in transitioning, we really, really, really have to really park that vocabulary around on the side, right? What we're after is really adopting a posture of experimentation and learning, right? I always laugh when I see there's so many articles about, lifelong learning, and we're all about lifelong learning, and we're teaching that to our young kids and our people who are more tenured in life. But in fact, it's really hard to do, because in order to learn, we need to suspend this vocabulary of arrival, right? That we've succeeded or we've failed, or we've arrived or we haven't. Keep that in mind this week as we think about the experimentation necessary to really put some confidence around those things that you see as the intentions you want to pursue. So the two exercises that we're going to do, number one, first, is an exercise that really tries to shift our attention to what it means to move forward in a very practical way, right? Several weeks ago, we talked about the process of transitioning, right? And it requires us to envision, right? To think about our imagined possibilities, right? To dream. And then to validate those dreams and set up a series of experiments that allow us to really get close to what those dreams might mean practically in our lives, and refine those dreams through a process of learning or refinement that goes with all of them. So this week's activity, the first exercise, will ask us to revisit our intentions and then think about those dreams that we've worked on in the last several weeks, and create a series of experiments and think about what that means on a practical level for how you'll move forward. So that's exercise number one. Exercise number two then begins a very exciting summary using a tool that I think is the most required for any of us in our transition, and that is what I call an anchoring statement. And that tool is something that helps you define a narrative for yourself, but also have a narrative ready to engage other people in what transitioning is going to mean. It first has us establish an experimental posture, right? It uses vocabulary like exploring, investigating, hoping, aspiring to, right? It uses experimental vocabulary to begin to frame out what our transition is all about. And this anchoring statement is intended to be used in social situations, in professional situations, right? If you're going to a professional association meeting or you're going to an interview, in all sorts of situations, this anchoring statement is intended to be used on a repetitive basis to help you be grounded even though you're in between, right? We all know that when we're in between, sometimes we can be completely unwound, right? It can be so discombobulating that we're actually, inarticulate. We're not able to talk to people in any kind of cogent way, right? The anchoring statement tries to parachute in when those times are kind of prevailing. And it helps us not only create the narrative for ourselves so we understand how it all fits together, but it also allows us to have a narrative that we can use with others. And frankly, in the best situations, it allows us to engage others and has them join us in our pursuit of whatever it is we're after in transitioning. Because remember, even though different things, different triggers bring us to this moment, this choice, when we decide we want to explore transitioning, the process we use, regardless of whatever that trigger is exactly the same. We come to transition having recognized, brought an awareness to the fact that something is shifting, right? Transitions occur when there is a shift in what holds value or meaning to us. And having the courage to be with that shift and recognize that shift. And frankly, explore what that shift might mean in terms of how you choose to bring your gifts forward is really what transition is all about. And so this anchoring statement is really used to help you begin to reconcile all that that's about, and also give you a tool so that during kind of the discomfort and change that's happening throughout your transition, you have a way to engage others, when in fact those times are often very, very difficult. Let me just tell you a story, and it's one that I keep in my heart all the time. And it was a woman who interviewed with me very early on in my interviews. And she was incredible. She was, of the hundreds of people that participated in my research, I remember almost every word of our conversation. She was somebody who was in her late 50s, and she was transitioning after a 26-year career with a single organization. And the thing that was fascinating about it is she said, I think I've gone through lots of major changes in my life, but this one caught me off guard. She was downsized or terminated in her role. A new CEO came into this large organization, and she said, first few meetings didn't go well, and ultimately I was walked down the hallway and given a pink slip one day. And she said, I was devastated. And it took her 18 months to get through 2 job searches after that. She took about a year to get a job, and it wasn't the greatest job, but she needed an income, and she continued to look and ultimately got to this place where she said, what, I feel as if I'm breathing for the first time. And that was the outcome of the courage that she summoned to go through transition, right? It wasn't easy. When she had been with that employer for 26 years, she had lost a child very early on to a very rare form of cancer. And she said, when I was terminated, she said, it was as if all of that was brought forward again. She said, I was reliving the emotions that happened when she died. And she said, so it wasn't just about losing a job or an identity, because she said, I certainly, after 26 years, a lot of my identity was wound up with this company. But it was more than that. And it was intensely unsettling. But ultimately, she said, through recognizing, bringing our awareness to those things that may be shifting for us, those things that hold value and meaning to us, for understanding the choices that we need to make, and for realizing not only the barriers but the emotions that are at play, she was able to get to this place where she said, I feel as if I'm breathing for the first time. And she had had a lifetime of incredible, incredible experiences. And so I say that to you only to say that transitioning is not easy, right? Most, in fact, if you look at the data, the great majority of U.S. adults don't choose transition. Now, my hypothesis is if they knew about it, they would choose it. And we have to work on educating. But once we have these tools, it is an incredibly uplifting, energizing process. I have never, in the hundreds of people who participated in my research, I have never once encountered someone who didn't say it was the best choice they ever made in their life. So welcome to week number 8. I'm thrilled for you to get at these final 2 skill sets, and I'm so delighted that you've had the courage to walk this far and explore those things that might be possible as you look forward. The one thing I know about transition is it is the way that we can untap the incredible potential that is resident within each of us. And I'm so honored that you've taken the walk with me to help you explore what that means. Anyway, I look forward to talking with you more about what transition is, and I hope you enjoy week 8. Take care.